Receive my greetings and a warm welcome to the lesson. The subject is auditing and assurance. Today we are going to study the form and content of working papers. Two things, form and content. Form and content. Form and content. Now, form and content are crucial for their effectiveness in supporting the audit opinion and also demonstrating compliance with auditing standards and facilitating the audit process. So form and content are very crucial because they support audit opinion, they also demonstrate compliance with standards, and they facilitate the audit process. These are two things, form and content. Let's begin with form. What is the meaning of form of working papers? Now here, form refers to the physical or electronic presentation and organization of working papers. You understand? The working papers or audit documentation may be in form of physical documents, or they could be electronically presented. So there are, by physical and by electronic, here we are referring to the medium. We are referring to the medium of working papers. So these working papers can be in form of hard copies, which is a medium. Audit documentation can be in form of hard copies. And traditionally, working papers were maintained in physical folders. This form is still used, especially for smaller engagements or even specific parts of the audit, hard copy. The other medium could be electronic. Audit documentation may be presented digitally, electronic or digital. And increasingly, candidates, audit firms use electronic working papers. For example, the case where we have working paper software like the audit file, practice manager, and so on. You understand? So working papers can be in form of electronic. Then an audit firm may also have a hybrid of these two. Hybrid, which is a combination of hard copies and electronic. Many audits involve a mix of both hard copies and digital copy, okay? With some documents scanned and stored electronically. These hard copies can be scanned and then they be stored electronically. That's what we're referring to as hybrid. So we've said form refers to medium or organization and structure. So number 2, organization and structure. Organization and structure. And organization, here we are referring to the logical filing system. We may have the logical filing system. So organization could be logical filing system. You understand? And that is whether it is physical or even electronic, working papers must be organized systematically. And that involves the permanent audit file. These files should be separated. You may have the current audit file, the permanent audit file, as we discussed earlier. So we know the current audit file is for current year's engagement, and the permanent audit file is for information of continuing relevance across multiple years. You understand? Yes. So that's what we mean by organization and structure. Whether you are maintaining physical files or digital files, these files must be organized in a certain way. They must be organized in a certain way. Then there is 3, Remember, we talked about the medium, organization, and also presentation. Form may also refer to presentation. Presentation. And regardless of the form, the content must be clear and easy to read. It's what we call legibility. The files must be legible. There is also neatness and clarity. Number 3, clarity. Neatness and clarity. By neatness, here we are referring to the professional presentation which reflects the quality of the audit work, and also clarity of linkage. That is clear connection between audit procedures, evidence obtained, and also the conclusions that are reached. So that's what is the meaning of form. Then there is a content. What is the content of working papers? Content of working papers. Now, the content here refers to the information contained within the working papers that substantiates the audit work and conclusions. And International Standards on Auditing 230 provides general guidance on the content requirements. So audit documentation should contain sufficient and appropriate records of the nature, timing, and extent of audit procedures performed. So you have the nature, timing, and extent of audit procedures. 1, nature, audit procedures. The content of working papers should contain the nature, timing, and extent of audit procedures. This could be the audit. These are audit procedures performed, which could include audit programs. Okay, audit programs. This is the detailed steps of procedures carried out. This could also include the sample selection. That is to mean how samples were chosen, and also the dates when procedures were performed. Then there is also the personnel who performed the work. You understand? Then number 2, we have the results of the audit procedures. The results of audit procedures, and it's not just the result of audit procedures, but also the audit evidence obtained, and audit evidence obtained, and audit evidence contained. So the content of audit working papers, the audit working papers should not just be the timing, nature, and extent of audit procedures performed, but also the results of the audit procedures and the evidence contained. So the audit working papers should contain audit evidence obtained. That is the second content. And here we are referring to the actual findings. What was discovered during testing? That also may include supporting evidence, which could be the of client documents, third-party confirmations, internal memoranda, analytical review results, and so on. Number 3, significant matters. The content of working papers also include significant matters that are identified during the audit and the conclusions reached thereon. And that includes identification of issues, discussions, professional judgments, and so on. You understand? Then lastly, we have evidence that the audit was done. There ought to be evidence that the audit was planned. The working papers should contain the evidence that the audit was planned, that the audit was planned. Evidence that the audit was planned and performed in accordance with international standards on auditing and applicable legal and regulatory framework. And that means that there ought to be an audit plan. The content should include audit plan. That is the overall strategy and detailed plan. It should also include materiality calculations, internal control documentation, review notes, management representation letters, and also audit conclusion opinion. That is evidence that the audit was planned in accordance with international standards on auditing and applicable legal and regulatory requirements. You understand? Yes. So that is the content of working papers. If you are to generate working papers, at the end of the audit process, the auditor should have a record of nature, timing, and extent of audit procedures performed. Number 2, the results of audit procedures and audit evidence contained or obtained. Then number 3, significant matters. Then number 4, evidence that the audit was planned. And that's the end of our today's lesson on forms and content of working papers. In this lesson, we've defined what we mean by form. Form refers to the physical or the electronic presentation and organization of working papers. That's why we have the medium. The form could either be, a form of working papers could be hard copies or digital copies, or a hybrid combination of both. Organization and structure, we may have the logical filing system, regardless of whether the audit working papers are in hard copies or electronic. There ought to be a logical filing system that contains permanent audit file and current audit file. Then there is presentation. The form also includes presentation, which should be legible, neat, and clear. Then lastly, we've discussed the content of working papers. We've defined what should be contained in working papers. So candidate, the goal here is that the goal of having working papers presented in this way is so that an experienced auditor, having no previous connection with the audit, should be able to understand the work performed, the evidence obtained, and the significant conclusions reached by reviewing the documentation. If you are an auditor and at the end of an audit engagement, you are required to present audit working papers. You are required to prepare audit working papers. So we are saying here that one goal behind having this audit working papers is so that anyone who didn't go through the audit process, anyone who did not take part in the audit of that engagement, should be able to understand the work that is performed, should be able to understand the evidence that is obtained. By just studying the documentation, they should also be able to see the significant conclusions reached by reviewing the documentation. That's why if you have to carry out an audit, ensure that the audit has the form and content as prescribed by international standards on auditing and the legal requirements. Thank you. God bless you. Bye-bye.